Okay, so I sat here for a little bit, um, trying to build up my courage before turning the camera on. So, as you can see in the title, I'm going to talk about the day my life changed forever. How I got to be the way I am now. And if you're a sensitive person, there's some trigger warnings in here, so you may not want to watch. I'm going to try to describe as much as I can, as much as I remember, but trying to stay within YouTube guidelines, because I don't know what is too much for them to flag it, and I don't want to do this again. But if this can help anybody else who is going through this now, it's worth it. And if you are going through this now with someone, sorry, my dog decided to get up on the bed. But if you are someone who is going through the loss of someone who decided to take their own life, no, it's not your fault. Took me a while to get there, but no, it is not your fault. No, there is nothing you could have done to prevent it. No, there is nothing you could have said to prevent it. We all make our own choices. We're all responsible for our own lives, nobody else. And what that person did was the ultimate selfish act. They only cared about themselves. Because if they cared about anybody else at that moment, they would not put you through it. If you're somebody out there thinking of doing what my fiance did, I beg you to please think about the people in your life, because you may be going through hell up here right now, but think about the hell you're going to put them through. You have to love them more than yourself. Please love them more than yourself, because your friends, your loved ones, are going to be left here to deal with that mess, and it will change them forever. It's not fair to them to do that. So please remember that. Please think of that, and don't do that to them. So, I guess we'll get into my story. So, in June of 2002, my fiance and I were going through a lot of trouble. He had always been emotionally manipulative. Anytime we would get in an argument, even if he's at fault, he would do things to end up turning it around and making me apologize. He played on my fear of being alone. Because at that point, that was my biggest fear in life, was being alone. I was 27. He was 28. He would always play on the fear of that and start to leave, and then end up making me beg him to stay. And at that point in my life, I couldn't I couldn't just say, fine, go. But in June of 2002, something in me just had enough. And I finally said, okay, you're 27. You can be okay. It has to stop. It has to stop. So we got in another argument. And I finally told him, I said, you know what? I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. You need to get your stuff and leave. Because the apartment was in my name. I said, you need to get your stuff and just leave. I can't do this anymore. And I went outside. I went downstairs and got in my car and was in there maybe 10 or 15 minutes. I called a close friend of mine at the time, and it was late at night, so it went to voicemail. She was sleeping. But I just left a message saying, you know what, I've had enough. I can't do it anymore. I told him to leave. When I got off the phone, I sat in my car a little bit because I was hoping he would have gotten all this stuff around, you know. No, he didn't say anything. I went back upstairs, and our walk-in closet was in our bathroom because it was a one-bedroom apartment, but it was a newly built apartment. So the way they did those was they had this huge bathroom with a garden bathtub, and they decided to put the closet in there instead of in the bedroom. I walked in, didn't see him, and I knew he didn't leave. Walked in the bedroom, wasn't there. Walked in the bathroom, he wasn't there. I turned and looked, and he was in the closet. He had taken our dog's leash, put it around the rod that was hanging up that held the clothes, and it must have been a really it must have been a really strong rod, because he was, I don't think I'm allowed to go into the detail, but you know where I'm going, what happened. I didn't think it was real. I thought he was faking it because his feet were still touching the ground, because the rod wasn't as tall as he was. And so I thought he was faking. I thought he was faking to get my attention, to get me to apologize again, because that's what he always did. I yelled at him. I said, this is ridiculous. You need to get up, get out. I can't do this anymore. But he didn't move, so I thought he was crying wolf. I said, fine. I said, I'm going to call 911 then, because I knew he wouldn't want to get the police involved. I called 911. He still did not move. The 911 operator came on, and it still was not registering. I thought, he's going to play this out. And this is what happens when somebody pulls this crap so much. The other person doesn't believe it, right? So the 911 operator comes on, and I said, I think my fiance blanked himself. He said, well, can you get him down? So I went out in the kitchen and I got a knife. And walked back in, and I cut the leash, and he collapsed. And then I saw his eyes half open. He had bitten through his lip. And then it hit me. And the 911 operator said, you need to bring him into a flat surface. I'm going to tell you how to do CPR. The paramedics are on their way, but you need to do this while they come. So I managed to drag him out of the bathroom, and I had to shut his eyes. I couldn't look in the eyes. And the 911 operator was telling me how to do the CPR, and I started to fall apart. I said, I can't do this, and he real calmly, and God bless him, he was amazing, real calmly said, Laura, you need to do this. You're the only one there. You need to do this. You're okay. I'm here. You need to do this. And I don't know if it was a combination of that and maybe a guardian angel touching me, but something just calmed me enough to where I could do the CPR. And keep in mind, I've never done CPR before, but he directed me on how to do it, and I did it. I don't know how long I was doing CPR. To this day, there is a lot of stuff still fuzzy. But over the years, I've been able to piece together more than I could then. But the paramedics got there, came in. They drug him out into the living room area. And I just collapsed on the floor. And all I can remember now, I didn't then, but I remember someone saying, she's hysterical. They worked on him, and he had a heartbeat. The police came, and they wheeled him out to the ambulance, and I called that friend back in hysterics, and I don't know, this time she picked up, and I said he blanked himself. She didn't have to, she said she's on her way. And she didn't live very far, so she must have been hauling because she got there in no time. I tried to tell the police officer as much as I could through the crying. He did try to calm me down, saying, look, they got a heartbeat back, they're, you calm down, he's breathing. And that gave me a lifeline. That calmed me down enough to where I could talk, and I explained. And he could go in and see the remnants of the bathroom and the closet, because the rest of that leash was still up. He said, you're not in any trouble. I said, I don't care about that. I said, I just want him to be okay. He said, well, they took him to the hospital. Your friend here can drive you. Make sure you put some water out for your dog. So I got a giant bowl, mixing bowl, and filled it with water. And my friend took me to the hospital. And somebody finally came out. My friend had called my mom at that point to let her know what was going on. So my mom was headed to the hospital. She called his mom so she could come to the hospital. And someone came out and said, you can go back and see him. And I went back, and they had him hooked up on monitors, and there was blood all over the floor, so I don't know if they had a problem getting IV in or what. I don't know. But he was unconscious. I just went and held his hand and was crying. I don't know at what point they had me go back out to the waiting area, but at that time my mom was there. His parents came in, and then they called us into a room to explain what happened. And keep in mind, I was blaming myself, you know. And I had it in my head, if he doesn't survive, I'm not going to. I can't deal with that. I wasn't going to be here anymore. I don't even know what they said. To this day, I don't know, because I was not in my right mind. I know they took him up to one of the rooms up there, in intensive care. I just sat by his bedside holding his hand, and I must have been saying, I can't be here if he's not here. I can't be here. And it must have been enough to have his mom talk to the hospital staff to tell them she was very concerned about me harming myself. So I don't know who she was, but she worked for the hospital. She said, she came in and talked to me and said, we want you to come to the mental health area of the hospital for observation, for us to talk to you. I said, what if I don't want to go? I don't want to go. And she said, well, unfortunately, you don't have a choice. So I guess there's something if they feel you're going to hurt yourself, they can do a mandatory hold. So they brought me downstairs and put me into an exam room and stationed a guard outside of the room, so I couldn't leave. Eventually somebody came in from the mental health side of the hospital, which was at a different location. They escorted me out to an ambulance and drove me there. When I got there, it's even to this day still a blur. I'll give you the bits and pieces of what I can remember. The clothing I was wearing, they said could cause me to do the same thing he did. So they made me just put on a hospital gown. They showed me to a room, which was just like a hospital room that you would stay in at the hospital, with a bed and all that. And they said, in the morning, I would go into a group counseling session that they have. Other women were there, young women like me, but they were apparently there on their own free will. They had checked themselves in. And then on the other side of the mental health ward, they had the people there that were not in their right minds. They were schizophrenic or whatever, but they weren't like us. I don't remember. I think I passed out from exhaustion, because the next thing I know, they brought in breakfast, but I refused to eat. We went into a giant, like, rec room area, and the other women were sitting there, and the counselor came in, and they were sharing why they were there, what was going on. They got to me, and I just told them what happened. I don't think I said anything else. They gave me some heavy medication to help with the anxiety and the panic. I can't tell you the kind, but and I don't know how long I was there for. That friend who drove me, she came to see me. My mom came to see me. I remember later my mom telling me that she couldn't understand what I was talking about. She couldn't understand me. I was mumbling. So eventually they told me that they were going to disconnect life support. And I told them there, I said, if you ever want me to be okay, I need to be there. I need to be with him. So they set it up to where one of them went with me in an ambulance back to the main hospital. The life support had given time for his grandparents to come in from out of town, all the family to be there and gather. And when I walked in, his grandma, sorry, just a minute. Thought I could get, hang on. His grandma came up and hugged me and thanked me for giving him CPR so he was able to live long enough for her to come and say goodbye. I could not believe that someone was thanking me for this. But she did. She said if I hadn't done that she wouldn't have gotten to see him and talk to him. Sorry. Okay. So I sat down by his bed and was holding his hand. And I didn't understand it because he was breathing, but they said he was brain dead. His brain went too long without oxygen. So they disconnected the life support, but he kept breathing on his own. And I didn't understand any of it. So I thought he's hanging on. You know, he might pull through because I didn't understand brain death or anything, especially if someone's breathing on their own. Because you think when someone disconnects the life support, that's it. Not always. It takes time. So, since he was still breathing and living, they took me back to the mental health ward. Again, I don't remember any of it. I remember one of the sweet girls that were there came and talked to me, and she had told me something like, I guess her girlfriend had done something to herself as well. I don't remember all of our conversation, but she was very sweet and we talked. You know, she tried to tell me it wasn't my fault. Eventually, they let me go back to the main hospital, and at that point they had transferred him up to the hospice wing of the hospital. I got there in the morning and sat with him, and then one of the people that work there said, you know, you need to take a break, come on out and sit in the waiting area just to kind of take some time. So I went out and they had this beautiful aviary. And I think that's why I love birds now. I never gave birds much thought, but watching them, it soothed me. So I can understand why they had that there. Just precious, sweet little birds that were in this huge aviary. And I just watched them for a while. And I went back in his room. My mom came. His mom was there. His family was there. My mom tried to get me to eat, and I still refused to eat. He was running a little bit of a fever, so one of the nurses thought it would be good for me to give him a cool sponge bath to try to lower the temperature. She knew I needed to do something, and so I gave him the sponge bath, you know, just cool water on the head and the chest area, and it brought his temperature down. But around 11 o'clock at night, his breathing started to get very weird. There was pauses, and it seemed like he was breathing heavy. I told his mom, go get somebody. He's breathing weird. So she went out and brought one of the nurses or somebody in. I was still holding his hand, and he breathed in, breathed out, breathed in, breathed out, and then he was gone. I collapsed. One of the orderlies or whoever worked there came and held me. His mom called my mom because at that point my mom had left and told her. So my mom flew over there. You know, she had to have been flying because I think she got there pretty quick. I don't remember anything other than collapsing and hysterics. And when my mom got there, they brought me into another room, wanted to recommit me. My mom said she would bring me back. I kept telling my mom, I don't want to go. I need to grieve. I don't want to do this. And when we got to a stoplight, I remember jumping out of the car. I wasn't going. My mom begged me to get back in the car. She said that she would just take me back home, back to her house. We could just go back there then. And she did. She took me back to her house where I used to live. And we had 2 boxers that were Lily and Leroy. I went into my old bedroom with a sleeping bag and laid on it. They watched over me until I fell asleep. And then they went back into my mom's room. My stepdad, was out of town. I woke up the next day and I don't know what happened. I know my mom got in contact with one of my friends who said that I should go stay with someone she knows who used to be a counselor, because I couldn't go back to my apartment. And to this day, I don't know why my mom didn't want me to be. I think because she just didn't know how to handle it, handle what I was going through, maybe. But I ended up at this lady's house and was staying there, but she didn't give me any kind of counseling. I don't know. Stayed there a couple days, and then the day of his service, I got up in the morning. My friend was going to come and pick me up to take me there, and I didn't make my bed. When I got back, she's like, well, you didn't make the bed this morning. I said, I know, I was so upset this morning. I didn't even think. And she's like, no, that's not how we do things here. So that was my sign. I'm leaving. I'm not staying here. That's ridiculous. That is a horrible thing to say to somebody who's going to a funeral. So that day I went back to my apartment, and my mom had called my work and gotten me on, I think I was on short-term disability. I don't know. I don't even know what I was on. It had to have been, because I was off for about 3 months. But I had mentioned moving back in, and my mom said that my stepdad, doesn't think it's a good idea because I would become just holed up there. What I really know is that he just didn't want me to come back home. You know, he wanted my mom. I was kind of an add-on. And once I'm out of the house, he didn't want me to come back. That's what it was. It was selfishness. But anyway, I stayed in that apartment until I was able to find another place. My mom went with me looking for places, trying to help me. But I couldn't sleep under the blankets or anything. I don't know why. I would only sleep when I passed out from exhaustion. And I would lay on top of the bed and just put a throw blanket over me to sleep. I don't know why I couldn't get in the blankets and sheets and all that. I don't know. For those 3 months, I was very self-destructive. I was going out every night, drinking. I didn't care what happened to me. I lost 50 pounds in a month because I refused to eat. Eventually, about 6 months in, is when I stopped blaming myself. Something in me snapped. I got pissed off. I said, you know what? He controlled me in life. He controlled me, and he's controlling me in death. He's not here anymore, and he's still controlling me. That's enough. He made that decision, and it's being put on me. And no, not anymore. You're not controlling me anymore. So that's how I snapped out of the SH, as they say on here. But I had always had a little bit of a depression. But after that, and to this day, even getting angry and knowing it's not my fault anymore, it did change me forever. I have severe depression now. I have severe anxiety, which I never had before. I've never had a panic attack until then, so I do get prone to panic attacks now. Not as often, but there are things that can set me off. So I have learned what the feeling is when it's getting ready to come on. My fingers start getting numb. My hearing starts going quiet. Like I can hear a little bit of a ringing and things get a little quiet. And I know to take one of my anxiety pills, the panic attack pills, which heads it off to becoming a full-blown panic attack. After our dog died, which was years down the line, I developed agoraphobia. And I think it's because she was my anchor. Because her and my cat were the only ones there with me when this happened. So they're the only ones that really truly understood. And it was nice having them because they knew. They knew what it was like. They knew what it looked like. They knew it all. Nobody else did. And nobody else would understand. When I lost her, I lost my anchor. And the agoraphobia just kind of came on. Little things here and there at the beginning, just kind of a little anxious to leave. And now it's not every day, but there are some days I wake up and it's active, is what I call it, to where I have to hold the doorknob for several minutes to will myself out the door. I don't go anywhere but to work, and I have to go to work to support myself. My mom has since passed. My dad has since passed. So I'm alone. I tried dating over the years and I just couldn't handle it. I got married. It lasted 3 months because I married the wrong person. He didn't know how to tell the truth to save his life. He expected me to take care of him, and I just wasn't having it, you know. I if I am not with somebody that is equal, who feels like, you know, they want to take care of me, you know, they want to contribute to our finances, and, you know, it's equal, I'm not going to deal with it. I would rather be alone now. And that's the thing. That's the funniest thing, is that I was terrified of being alone then. I'm alone now, and I'm okay. You are okay if you're alone. Know that. You don't need somebody else if it's a bad situation. You're better off alone. But I haven't dated in several years because I just don't want to deal with the drama. I can't let anybody in. It's a self-protection mode. It's a survival mode. I don't know. But I'm just not willing to let anybody in. So I prefer to be just with my dogs and me. But yeah, that to this day, he has left me with all of those mental health issues. I struggle and deal with it on a daily basis. Some days, of course, are harder than others. But I'm 51 now. I made it through. You can make it through. And yeah, that's my story as best as I can recall all of it. Of course, I told you there's lots of pieces missing. You know, I don't know how all of it transpired afterwards. I remember a lot more than I did, though. Yeah. So, if this helps anybody, I'm glad. But yeah, take care of yourselves, and just remember what I told you in the beginning of this video.